Just fixing my selfie stick. I found it. So this is vlog 72 or something like that. I'm not going to turn the main light on here. This is out on the porch. My feet are going to get cold. They already are. It's because I sat and listened to maybe the better Kolbrin Kolbrin Bible video that's out there, where they let Mr. McMasters, I think his name is, go on for as much as he could. But they kept on asking about ET technology and so what about the alien technology in the Ark of the Covenant? Well, that's the immediate supposition of too many videos, but that's okay. I'm used to reading past that and just listening and saying, okay, so what else am I hearing in there? And it's interesting to hear in that this little discussion they were having about it, that this they mentioned, because I'm big on Haran, which on the Upper Chaldea, and that is right next to Phoenicia, and that was the Phoenicians were the first to use the stars for navigation. Well, guess why? Because Upper Chaldea is where the stars were first studied, or at least on that in West Asia anyway. I don't know about India and China, and everywhere else. There are many different human experiences. But they all had that seems to have been come about at the end of the 12,800 Cataclysm. And the era that followed it, and then this other precipitous event, the 6,000 BC collapse of the ice dam across from Ungava Peninsula over to Greenland, across from Labrador, across Davis Strait, and why it happened. And was there more than one meteorite? That was a big ice cap. Now, sure, one meteor can know the whole thing, but just up on the Arctic Ocean side of it, and so you have that big puddle that is Hudson Bay, but what's at the bottom of the puddle? So that's my previous videos. But so I mentioned in those videos about the Kolbrin, and other things like the Book of Enoch and the Book of Giants and the apocryphal histories that, like Berassus, the hidden Berassus, that are dismissed, which they're not in India. They're part of the religion in India. So this whole bit towards the end of their discussion, I didn't listen to the whole thing because I wanted to start this. About that the ancients knew a lot. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. So what the Ark of the Covenant might have been, for example, in their version of the Exodus thing, which is very interesting to see, the Kolbrin has the Egyptian side of the Exodus story. And the land bridge that it speaks of, well, that's not the Sea of Reeds, okay? That's this thing in the Gulf of Aqaba, for which there's now archaeological proof. The geological explanation, I don't know, but the question of the water boiling, well, maybe advice, I don't know. Maybe something to do with this thing of gold that they had and this thing that they had to carry, or, is there some kind of other seismic thing that could have happened around that area, and a tsunami within the Red Sea that could have affected the Gulf of Aqaba? And then maybe there was an arch there that was filled over. I don't know, but somebody should go down and do the deep geology underneath where they found all those wheels and bronze, whatever they found there. Midway through the Gulf of Aqaba, and east of it is the real Mount Sinai. But the thing is that because the biblical obsession of YouTube, because of the American perspective, very much the American, not so much. I don't see a lot of British YouTube, or don't listen in French like I could, maybe Spanish. But this obsession with the biblical perspective is so Western and so limiting. That it's taken for granted, that they're going. I remember reading the Tao of Physics I'm 63, when I was in about 13, 14. And it was all about, that Fritjof Capra is this author that came out with a little paperback, that I had with Shiva dancing on the cover, and the dance of Shiva is all some physical theory, right? And the Upanishads contain, and the Rig Veda, and other Indian philosophy and poetry contain metaphysics, not just metaphysics in the philosophical sense, but hard, like particle physics and cosmological physics, the same way that they quote in this video that I'm watching, when they finally let the guy continues to try and talk in a more rational sense than where the interviewer is trying to lead him to. I'll give him that much one. But they finally get to that the Kolbrin has this other account of physical cosmology, that is very much like what the knowledge of the universe now and what dark matter is, and also just philosophical statements like God is within man and man is within God. This is like the perspective of the Kolbrin is, yes, from a higher civilization that was wiped out. It was wiped out. A couple of things wiped it out. The great breaking of the ice dam in 6000 BC, and the raising of the seas by the 200 meters that I've done about in other videos. That happened. Now, what was the other thing that was just in my head? He getting old. Oh, yeah, of course. Oh, the great years of darkness. You see the look on my face, right? So, you know our little friend Krakatoa that just caused that tsunami down in Indonesia, you know, that's been around for a while, made the big boom a couple hundred years ago and heard around the world, you know, that little volcano there, you know, that was his little child down at Krakatoa, that little volcano. Okay, well, that little volcano, it's thought that, and it seems to have been the date, because there's all kinds of evidence, even heard in China, where they got all sorts of came out of the sky, and you know the manna in the desert, from the manna in the desert was probably something to do with Thera, you know, and all the phenomena. I've seen this thing on that about all the phenomena in the 7 plagues of Egypt, which had to do with Thera. The 10 plagues, was it? I'm not sure. I'm not a biblical person, but yeah, the biblical association limits your thinking, people. Okay, you got to go look at also the Mahabharata, and now it's considered literal fact now, especially now they found Dwarka and the Saraswati. Right, so I wish I could understand Hindi or Sanskrit, you know, and Rigveda and all the Upanishads. I recommend a book called Speaking of Shiva, which is about Virashaiva poetry from Kerala in southern India, and it's intense metaphysical poetry. But metaphysics and physics, they converge. This is the whole point of Platonics too, like the way where Socratic inquiry can go. Just mythical inquiry, mythical metaphor can go to metaphysics. This is what Hindu philosophy is. This is what, who knows what the Christians burned. Because what happened at the time of the Great Years of Darkness, I'm not sure when the reign of Theodosius II was. I think it was before that. Charlemagne was after it. But maybe it was Theodosius II, but during the conversion, thousands of monks or priests, let's call them priests, monks and nuns, let's call priests and priestesses, monks and nuns of the pagan faith, and sages and learners of wisdom who had preserved knowledge for millennia orally, were slaughtered by the Christians, and their libraries, or yes, of course, in the case of the Greeks and the Romans, definitely libraries, including in other languages. Armenian, all of that, you know, that they raped the world, the Romans. Then the Romans did it to the Carthaginians, and then the Carthaginians, you know, Romans did the Carthaginians, and then once the Romans became Christians, they did it to everywhere they went. They wiped out everything else that had anything that disputed that what they wanted to be the truth would be the truth, and nothing else was allowed to tolerate it to continue to exist, which is why the Gospel of Thomas only survives in Ethiopia, or only survived in Ethiopia. And still is dismissed by all the other, even the Orthodox churches. Maybe some of them are recognized, like Antioch or something, I don't know. I'm speaking of the Patriarchate. So also, you know, this brings up, this ramble into the Mediterranean area also brings up the Punics. I mentioned the Phoenicians and the stars. This is when I listen to the Kolbrin Bible stuff, it raises, I want to talk about the whole Hiawatha Glacier, and I'll get to that in a second, because that's why I'm listening to that. I'm trying to find it in there, what's the events, but I can't get to it here, because they're talking all the biblical religion stuff, you see. You know, but that because of what we don't know, that was what did we not know, what was people were capable of, not just in Roman times, but in Egyptian times. And the events of the Exodus now is kind of thought to be Amenhotep the third, I think it is, about 1700 BC, as opposed to Ramses about 1200, for various reasons. But I understand that a little more. It makes a lot of sense. So we have this other windows into the past that are emerging than just the Christian window. Imagine what was burned by the Portuguese bishop in Goa. Oh my God! So it's really a tragedy what we don't know. But this is the whole thing about when I brought about Carthage. I mentioned the Roman destruction of Carthage. They also destroyed other libraries like Pergamum and Corinth and stuff, right? I don't know who destroyed Pergamum actually, but Corinth was Romans destroyed, and it was as great as Alexandria's library. Which is why Alexander founded Alexandria, or Ptolemy did, whichever one of the two founded it. You know, I'm not sure actually. But Punic civilization stood for 1,000 years before Rome. Carthage had libraries. I think it had a great library. I think it had like, I would mostly just consider the collection of all the books of all the people who lived in the city. And because they were travelers, they were really, really well-spoken and articulate people and traders. Spoke more than a few languages. Probably they also spoke the language of the British Isles because they had to go there and trade. They probably spoke, whatever else was spoken, Dorian, Greek, Roma, Egyptian, whatever Serbian language was on the coast by then. What I don't even know was on the coast then in terms of the Baltic. Who knows? Right? I can't guess right now. I have to think really hard to think about that. But the Phoenicians were, they got their way around to Britain, and they seem to have been the ones that taught the Norse how to build boats. And they rowed around Spain and up to the British Isles. Those are mean seas, and they didn't stay to the coast. So those ships could handle it, right? So they could go across the Atlantic. They could make it to the Canaries. They could make it to all. They could make it, they wound up blowing west. Of course they did. And there's always stories of fair-haired original peoples on the east coast of the U.S. before there was some kind of plague. Then there was only a few, like before the Mayflower and the Virginia colony showed up. Sometime, But also you have, that the one of the things that's in the Kolbrin that's interesting, and just listening to this, right? That before the previous age, there have been all kinds of previous ages of the world, but there was a previous form of mankind that existed before some great cataclysm, before which they said it was the guy described it as a Tolkien-like world, with other species of beings, but then there's that story from New Zealand, when the Maori arrived there 1,400 years ago, or was it 800, 1,400, 1,200, something like that, that there were already two races of people living there, right? Big ones and little ones. And the little ones that lived in the woods, and big ones that lived up in the hills. They were covered in tattoos. And they were fair-haired, red-haired and blonde. Red-haired and blonde. Okay. Okay, so who were they? Well, what happened to the wars between the elves and the gods and the men in the British Isles that the Book of the Down Cow records anyway? Also the Elder Edda, which the fragments of which recall. I really hope maybe someday another document turns up, and I don't know if seawater doesn't decay parchment or whatever was being used to put on libraries being ordered by the King of Denmark to be brought back to Iceland, maybe written on wood or stone, not with stone, but stuff that was. The wood would be gone. I'm just trying to think of what would survive at the bottom of the North Sea or the Norwegian Sea, because all the ships of the King of Denmark, he called once Denmark, Iceland, and finally said, okay, we're having too much trouble on our own. We'll become part of Denmark. The old Commonwealth had to join, And he said he heard about all the sagas and all the libraries that they had, all the writings that they had. He ordered it all collected and sent for the Royal Library for Copenhagen. The whole fleet sank in the storm. Where exactly, I don't know. But if marine archaeology can go recover those ships, and there's any chance at all that parchment or anything or whatever they're written on might have survived at deep depths. Now in the Baltic they might have, because there was that former body of water there, and we know this in what might be found in the Black Sea, because the Black Sea preserves organic material, like the Roman ship they found, the wood is intact. So parchment would exist, things in jars, protected from. There's no current, so there's no bacteria, there's no oxygen in the water, so nothing decays. It's not going to be like that at the bottom of the North Atlantic, but just by a sheer fluke, that some other fragment of Norse history turns up than what we have, which was the Elder Edda and the Poetic Order, which is pretty much the basis of Norse scholarship and our knowledge of what my ancestors and our ancestors, for all of us who are descended from them, look like. And a lot of people who don't even know that they're descended from them, right? Because the Norse were a civilization. They spanned the North, and I could go on a long discussion about them, and I will someday. But back to all this stuff about the Kolbrin and this other event that happened, that caused this cataclysm of this previous world that wiped out all these people. It seems a fragment of them survived in New Zealand, despite the cataclysm of Krakatoa. Oh, I didn't go back to finish what that was. I'm sorry. an old man. He gets lost in the trees, but it happens when you hang out with Ents, okay? So the cataclysm that split Krakatoa, or Krakatoa split Sumatra and Java into two islands. Boom was heard in China loudly. Now, what happened in that area, never mind, but it darkened the world. It's actually going. I didn't have to go through too much time to explain it, but it darkened the world for 3 years. The moon and the sun, they still cast light, but not as much, and the sun's light was cold. It cast no heat. It was bright, but it cast no heat, and the world got cold. Now the Fimbulvetr, the evil winter. Fimbul kind of word associated with evil. Vet is winter, right? For 3 years, presaged Ragnarok. So we have a date for Ragnarok now. To me, because now it sounds to me that Voluspa is a tribal memory. Okay, that applies to 541 AD, the end of the 3-year winter caused by the eruption of Krakatoa in 537. For which there's proof. All the usual stuff from the glaciers and all that stuff, certain eruptions and all this stuff, it all ties in. So, as far as the Kolbrin goes, I started watching this to try and listen to try and get to what's in it. I'm going to have to listen to the whole Kolbrin because I want to find out. It's like the Berassus thing. It's like, okay, what have you got to say about these ancient events, right? Because I just want to get other sources than the usual filtered Christian, okay, the Romans let this survive bias. We only get from the ancient past what the Romans want you to know about. Like all thought of the Gauls as primitive is not true. It's Roman lies. The thought of Carthaginians as worthy of being wiped out is untrue. They envied the Carthaginians their success in their engineering. They copied it. The Romans are copycats. What the Carthaginians didn't have was the Romans' ruthlessness, and their engineering. Well, they had ruthlessness. Oh God, yeah. As generals and admirals, oh my God, yeah. They ruled the Mediterranean. But they were founded out of Haran. So Punic civilization, I submit, is a 10,000-year-old civilization dating to and I would say Tizkol Tepe is where Haran came from. The cult of the stars, the song of the stars that I once speculated on. Where did the ephemeris come from? Yeah, sure, we can. Where did the ephemeris come from? Because they were published before there was books. There were astrologers who could look back at a date and know where the planets were on that date. Oral tradition, memory. See, because the Iliad and the Odyssey are huge. So is the Rig Veda. So are the Upanishads. They're all done by memory. We don't have those memory capacities now. We have 5-10 second attention spans. So because of those 5-10 second, 5-10 minute attention spans, I get people telling me that I sound like I'm crazy because I'm rambling. Well, there's a lot of ground to cover, kiddies. You guys have long legs to cover all the ground there is to cover. You understand me, little boys? Right? Because that's what I feel like I'm talking to when I hear that kind of talk from somebody impatient with not hearing me out, everything I have to say. It rambles and I get off on other related subjects, but it all comes back down to knitting history and geological and temporal fact that we know with what's coming out now in scientific research and discoveries. And things like the Kolbrin, it gets discredited as having suspicious origins. Well, don't tell me that most of the Bible doesn't have suspicious origins. And I kind of buy the whole thing about Titus. So it always makes me wonder. Now I heard that bit about the Joseph of Arimathea going to Britain and having mines again. There, I haven't even thinking about him supposedly taking Jesus with him is one story I heard there. But maybe there's this whole thing that the Flavians wrote, the Gospels, the Evangelions. That their military organization. That's what Evangelion is a Roman term for a military unit, right? And that's what gospel means. Evangelion is translated as gospel. But they're all a Flavian thing, trying to set Titus up. It's all a Titus. Anyways, but I know it existed because his grave's in Kashmir, and he's a respected man in India, and in the Middle East. And I would imagine in Axum, of course, they venerate him. They venerate him once they got the story of the resurrection in Axum, But that's probably where he went when it says he went to the wilderness of the east. right? That would include Axum as well as Persia and India, right? So only in the Roman world is that wilderness. Oh my God, the Romans are upstarts. Romans are the kids, man. The Romans destroyed Carthage, which was 1,000 years older. And Carthage as a city was 1,000 years older. Punic civilization on the Phoenician coast was the port country for the star cults of Haran, which were founded at Göbekli Tepe. It's so obvious the line of succession, you can even see it, right? And then this thing happened, right? In 6000 BC, and it just changed the Black Sea. Who knows again, bottom of the Black Sea, what's down there? Please, somebody go down and look. So the gold work, there's this thing on the Kolbrin commentary I was listening to about gold, the high amount of gold, what gold can be used for. Yeah, well, that makes you really wonder about what Thracian gold skills were like, considering the quality of their gold work, right? So what else must have been around in the way of knowledge? Because we've always had that legend about the Golden Age and the Silver Age and the Bronze Age and the Iron Age and all that, about the different ages of mankind, right? And then there's a Popol Vuh, which is the Mayan, all the different cycles of mankind and the universe. And same with Hinduism, with the yugas. That they all tie together. They're all similar. The same in the 9 worlds in the North. If you get past before the Aesir became the dominant faith, because the Vanir were the original, Earth faith kind of, and there's a whole thing between the Aesir and the Vanir I don't want to get into in this video, but well, it might have been 6000 BC that it happened in, but this is this 3-year winter in 537 because of Krakatoa. But 6000 BC would have also caused the devastation of places that had proto-Germanic civilization coming out of, but at the time maybe Celtic, and maybe Sami were farther south, But out in Doggerland, what was out in the middle of Doggerland? Well, the Eddas tell us, that Asgarth was in the center of the world, the center of the universe, right? So this big broad plain between the Pennine Hills and the little low hills of Denmark, and at the mouth of all these rivers, right? That's the center of the world, I'd say, right? And then this huge wave came, and it would have come as a wave, or just so rapidly rising sea, you wouldn't be able to run. Like more like, I don't know the rate it would have come. I really don't, but it would have been, 200 meters, and goodbye, and hello, England, hey, look at those nice islands, in that country, those cliffs pretty. It took a while to form those cliffs, but yeah, and the flooding of the Black Sea, the drowning into Orca, that all happened in 6000 BC, but also, 537, there was this huge volcanic thing. We've had other things, there's been another volcanic thing in the 1100s, 1176, I think there's another one. There's a video about it, the day the world ended or something, 1176 AD. No, maybe that's a BC one, then maybe that's about Thera again too. And now Thera now ties into that the Hyksos were the Hebrews. So the Hebrews that left also had this other issue that whatever the Kolbrin says they were carrying out of the old capital, which was on this, it wasn't Cairo, it was on the Nile Delta, this certain city, I can't remember its name. And, it wasn't for Palestine they were heading. If they left from where that was and they wound up crossing the Gulf of Aqaba to go to Jebel al-Lawz, which is in Saudi Arabia. And yeah, it does have the split rock. It has all the signs of the exorcism through the platform the golden calf would have been put up on. And there were chariot wheels in the water even. We're covered in coral. Gate to coral. Gate to coral. See, this is the thing. I am a rambling old man, but I come up with questions while we're talking, right? Right? Dates of coral. Look for the data. Look for the data. When you come with a question, you're younger than I am, people, please. And I don't have the time to research everything I think of. So I do ramble. And I am the end professor, and somebody will call me crazy. And yeah, there'll be people call me nasty things. I don't care. But I'm just trying to share my knowledge. And get you thinking about what to think about. Does that make sense? It's not supposed to make sense because it's supposed to make you not think it's nonsense. It make you think, well, what is this guy talking about? Because, there's a lot of facts that it doesn't really matter that we're finding all this out. I find it all fascinating, like this, that the Barasis and the Hiawatha Impact Glacier might be tied. There might be information in Berassus, or there might be information in the Kolbrin Bible that ties to these ancient events, right? That we now know have the literal fact of, right? And we have to look at all the old legends and all the mythologies and take them at face value, the way that we should be taking, apparently in India, they always, of course, have taken it at face value, the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads, and Rig Veda and all the other Vedas, you know, uh, and the huge corpus of mythological literature that presages Islam, and the cults that used to exist in Mecca and also all through the Middle East, including the Yazidis and the Alawites before they became, more closely allied to the Sunnis and got more, or the Saudis became more Sunni. All the mystical cults of Syria, basically, and the dervishes, you know, and that whole area, Kurdistan, all of it, that whole mystical area of all the way from Armenia down to Chaldea, that whole area is called Upper Chaldea. Lower Chaldea is Babylon and Sumer, and everybody, you always hear about the Sumerians inventing mathematics and astronomy. No, 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 no. That was all of Upper Chaldea, and the Ugarit is where cuneiform came out of. Anyway, that's a whole sort of separate topic from the Hiawatha crater, I guess, isn't it? Or isn't it? Because before the Hiawatha crater, there was a lower sea level yet than that 6,000 BC, 200-meter level. That's what they said on the scientific videos from Climate State that I watched. Said. So what was that lower sea level? You see where I'm going on that? Okay, so we have that one ice dam let go. The Hiawatha, yeah, would have released a lot of water, all through the Arctic Ocean. And look where the impact glacier is. It doesn't face Ellesmere. It doesn't face south. It doesn't face Baffin Bay. It's not anywhere near Baffin Island or the center of the ice sheet. But what caused the Laurentian ice sheet to melt is, like I say in my previous video, that there maybe is another meteor or a cluster of ice or something that came off from, hot ice or hot material that burned through the atmosphere and impacted somehow, steamified, made a puddle or something. I don't know. Or if I want to say Lake Superior, but Lake Superior is only the tiniest little drop left of what there was, which was something like 3 million or 3 billion cubic liters of water, or some bizarre number. I saw it in one video, right? So that's the whole volume of the Laurentian Greenland Cordilleran ice cap. And what its configuration is, nobody's actually too sure. I think of the whole thing. A little bit, I guess. Maybe Mixers in there might know, or somebody in Canada might know. But that's an awful lot of water to melt all at once. Even when you say that, okay, it happened in 12,800, and that didn't happen until 6,000. But okay, what happened in the meantime? What caused Hudson Bay, the Hudson Bay area to melt, where the heaviest amount of the ice was? God help us, it wasn't sunlight, I don't think. See where I'm going, right? There's other questions here to be asked, right? That wait a minute here. So that happened. But at 12,800, what was that lower sea level yet? And it kind of means that places like what's the depths on the East Siberian ice shelf where all the methane clathrates are? What's down there? What's the methane made from? That's all the clathrates. It's not just crystallized methane compressed on the floor of the ocean. That was all above land, I think. That was all above either the 6,000 BC level or the pre-12,800 BC sea level. So I'd like to find out what that is. This is, like I say, all my videos as the young professor are videos of inquiry. I practice Socratic inquiry, I guess you could say, and I just happen to know a whole lot of things. I have like a mentat's mind of all, like from Dune, Frank Herbert's Dune, the mentats, the human computers. I have this vast storage capacity of everything I read. I have an eidetic memory for. No, I can't give you a line in a site or remember the author's initials. I'll be lucky to remember his name, right? But I know everything I've read, and I don't make stuff up. I'm good at synthesizing it, but I do it rationally. I do it logically. I'm a thinker, So I am a philologist. I am a thinker. I am a philosopher. I don't speak in the formal boxes of somebody who's had a degree and had to go through the academic system and footnote things and write down notes for simpler brains to figure things out with. Don't mind me being uppity, but 63 years of listening to bullshit from people who don't know what they're talking about gets a little tiring, okay? I'm not being angry, I'm just holding back from saying certain things that might sound more pretentious than what I just said. I'm just speaking the truth, that I see worthwhile things. So I'm sorry to be an old, nasty, angry professor. But I'm asking you, hey, listen to the old guy here, that all this Kolbrin Bible stuff, now the Book of Enoch, the Book of Giants, the Book of the Dun Cow now, like I say about, the wars between the gods and the elves, but now I want to know, because these, the Book of the Giants, the Book of Enoch, and other books that deal with the age of the patriarchs, and the age of the sons of heaven, the giants, the sons of the earth and the sky, the mating of Kronos and the earth, Kronos and Gaia, the Titans, who lives here in the mountains, I know still, and they're longer and older lived than us. And although that sounds really crazy, doesn't it? But when you live out there, you know, you already know. And no, reason doesn't cover it, because reason is a human faculty. It limits your understanding the same as the way your academic degree limits your understanding, and you need to see things in boxes. Mythology fuses it all. I had this course by Kieran Egan, I believe might still be a professor at UBC. I'm sorry, at SFU. We had a seminar in fall '77. It was Myths, Fictions, and Histories, the Meaning of Experience. Great seminar. It opened my mind to the whole notion of that what myth and fiction and science are all different ways of grappling with reality. And physics is very limiting, if it doesn't allow you to have the time, if you just study only physics, you don't have the time to study all the history necessary to understand human history related to the physics that you're going to be studying. Especially when it comes down to the geology and glaciology and oceanography of the Holocene, and especially the Anthropocene, which refers to the period of history involving human civilization, humanity's effect on the planet. There's a certain date for it. It's recent, because it's when we become the primary factor. The Holocene just meant like the now epoch. The Holocene just meant the recent times. But no, the Anthropocene is the age that we have begun by all our transformation, our sea of plastics, our pollution. There's going to be a wave of pollution, this layer of filth that's going to be left over, chemicals, this layer of strange deposits left over from this strange species that long disappeared many million years before. By the time maybe 100 few thousand years before another human civilization arises out of the whatever might survive out of the heat of this planet, unless there's a thermal event, some kind of reaction that starts cooling it like a higher albedo, that starts cooling it rapidly and prevents us from becoming Venus, as global warming seems to be due if the methane releases. So, why is the methane down there on the East Siberian ice shelf? What else is down there? Because that was all lowland that suddenly flooded when. What was on it actually? That I don't know, because the ice was on Ellesmere and Alaska and the Yukon and Canada, and British Columbia and down into the Midwest and Greenland. It wasn't, and it covered the Arctic, sure, but what was over on that? Because the water was lower, right? So how much of the for example the Arctic ridge that strikes out towards the North Pole from the Russian side? How much of that was above water? Was any of it before the hit of the 12,800 impact of the thing, or maybe ice? I don't know, but I'm going to have to look at that, because it all raises questions about, well, where was that lower sea level? Where was humanity at that previous time? Where might humanity have been? At 12,000, we know Black Sea, they were at the bottom of the Black Sea, and the Doggerland at Dwarka, but where were they before that 12,800 event? You see, one question leads to another. It's hard being a Socratic when you look at data like this, that we know the data does all fit together. Those who know these dates I'm talking about understand what I'm talking about. That the sequence of events raises all these other questions about, well, if that happened then this happened then, so what does that say about where this might have been? So there's all kinds of those strange things that get found around the world that don't make any sense, that are far older than we thought things were, like the stuff flying around out of Russia and the Caucasus. We're only just starting to find out what's in Africa and South America. you know. And no, that sounds strange because we thought we knew a lot about South America, but there's stuff in Brazil now that's even older, you know. It's like, okay, what else is there out there? And I remember now, I was listening this afternoon. I remember this afternoon, I was listening to the radio. I remember listening to the radio in the early 1980s with my friend, Lake Francella. And there was the signs of a huge civilization in the Yukon Valley and back discovered back around then. It was some kind of survey that they'd done. You know, and then there's a story of Temlahan, a city that was destroyed by the Medik in the Skeena country. You know, like there's all these other stories. So, but now you've got with the Missoula floods, you've got the Hiawatha Glacier, and you've got all these other events worldwide. What else happened in the books? 12,800. What calculates out in the Book of Enoch and the Kolbrin Bible? And whatever other books like that, and the Rig Veda, and the Times of the Yugas, and the Mahabharata. There's all the schedules in the Indian philosophy and Indian history. We can figure that out easy. Somebody will know that. 12,800 years ago, yeah, this was going on, whichever yuga that was, or whatever these things within yugas. Indian understanding of time is very complex. That's why they're so good at higher mathematics and cosmology, because they can conceive in higher numbers without eating numbers, which is the whole what I was saying about this book called the Tao of Physics. So these guys wrote the Kolbrin Bible, bringing it back to that video again that I'm trying to find what I'm looking for in, you know, I'm listening patiently to all this stuff, that they don't get that. Yes, of course the Kolbrin is going to embrace like metaphysics that are very high order that they're not known about, because things like that were eradicated by the Romans. Sorry. Yes, it's hard being a survivor of them, you could say. Or a revenant. Perhaps I'm a revenant of a bard or a druid from the ancient times who have just seen too much. Right. I don't claim to be anything. I claim to be the unprofessor because I don't have a degree, because I know too good goddamn much. For my own good goddamn good. And that's for damn sure, as Mount Murray would say. Right. But, you know, these questions demand to be asked. You know, what else is there down there? What else do we know in these old books? So we should now maybe have all the scientific community needs to open its mind and look at all these older books, and you know the questions raised by the ground surveys from Hawara. You know, now which I'd like to see ground surveys of Iran. You know, and other places, giraffes. That would get really interesting because giraffes is 3,000 years older than Sumer. So all this stuff in this guy's talking about Sumer in the Kolbrin. Oh, you know, and Anunnaki, Enki, and all this stuff from Hawaii and all that stuff, you know. Okay, that was a new civilization, folks. 4,000 BC, that's nothing, kids. Giraffe is older. All right. Now, what went on in the Hindu history before Mohenjo-daro and Harappa and Kurdiwarka, I don't know. I'm going to have to read up someday when I get my next lifetime, perhaps. Perhaps I get to die in India, dying in ashram and mountains, you know, studying, just studying. Perhaps I'm meant to go there. Perhaps my karma calls me back there. Calls me there. I've never yet been there. You know, and yeah. For now, I have a place in the mountains I'm going to, which you know I will greatly enjoy. And I've all the work that I'm doing here, like here with this vlogging, I will continue to do from there, probably a lot better and a lot more focused, which I intend to do. But the Kolbrin, because of the Hiawatha impact stories now, and the questions that were raised by it. Right, and as I said, with the history of Berassus that the Masons have and won't talk about, fine, okay, I know it exists because I've held it in my hands and looked at it. I know what's in it, and I've read other people say what's in it. Anyways, never mind. So it's not just the Smithsonian and the scientific establishment who have a conspiracy against truth. Believe me. It's not just the Masons either. Right. It's not just the Masons, the religions, right? It's just natural human ignorance. Needing to protect. Although I understand in the case of the political reasons for withholding the history of Berassus from the Western world were very important, right? I understand. I totally get it, and I appreciate the Masons for their protection of human consciousness from the realities of the former world of what was lost. But the Golden Age, when we had higher technology and was destroyed, and Atlantis was, I believe, part of it. You know, the Egyptians speak of it that way, right? But the ages of when men were taller and fairer, and then the Silver Age is ages of higher technology, increasingly lesser technology, and lesser moral values, and increasing greed and violence. Now, Göbekli Tepe appears to have been. I'm going to close with some more observations that relate to the comet event. Let's call it that, the comet event, the Hiawatha comet. Let's call it that, because we have a meteor from it. But what was this whole thing about the Hudson Bay melting, the Laurentian ice sheet melting? I'm thinking a comet accompanying the meteor or coming shortly after it to build up that ice dam and maybe it happened after that. There's this talk of maybe somebody that once said the impact about 10,800. Somebody else had a date for it somehow. So maybe there's a second impact. And in which case we're kind of in a bowling alley. It's kind of scary. There's going to be another impact, but we could have another volcano like Krakatoa too. That would balance things out quick. But anything can happen. But the Kolbrin is interesting because it's this other window on time. It gets you knowing that in the Book of Enoch, this idea that there's this greater time than we knew in human history. And the stars really did align. And Immanuel Velikovsky and James Churchward, they really were right. And all those the ideas that were dismissed as like weird, paranoid science, popular fiction, or whatever they were. Churchward and his moose stories and his code symbols of the ancient symbols, which now they is literally studying the Thracian symbols the same way, and the Harappan symbols and the Sumerian symbols on the seals. They're trying to sort out the code languages that were used. There's obviously languages, same as Pictish, in the Ogham, and the type of things that are like Ogham that are found around Ukraine. So Göbekli Tepe. My point being, I'm sorry, I'm an old man, but it's hard surfing all this knowledge all at once and getting to your point. It really is. Staying on balance. I don't know, but it helps me follow the line where I'm going. The Göbekli Tepe. This was the first time. The first time that we know of so far. It's the first time that we know of so far that mankind had come together to build a giant, evidently monument to the stars. In reaction to something, perhaps. But these were, as they say, hunter-gatherers. These people who lived off the bounty of the land. These are people who lived in the time of Eden, when men did not fight. When they hunted. But they didn't seem to have wars. But something had stirred them to build this great observatory. Observatory, that's the wrong word. It's a temple to the stars. Let's call Göbekli Tepe what it is, please. It's a temple. It may not have a city or a religion that we can identify, but because we have nearby the Temple of the Seven Planets and the temples of Haran and the Temple of the Moon God Sin, who stood until the Mongols destroyed it only 1,000 years ago. Oh, the loss, the pain, but like so much like those Viking libraries from Iceland I'm talking about. What has been lost to history by fire and water and war and censorship, by religion and kings and emperors and fate and murder and just pure human spite when somebody throws somebody's things into a fire. Or kills a bard because they didn't like them. Whereas the Romans killed them because they were great carriers of knowledge. They were human libraries. Anyways, the Kolbrin needs to be examined. The Book of Enoch. I'm speaking in relation to the Hiawatha impact. The Kolbrin needs to be examined. The Book of Enoch needs to be examined. The Book of the Giants needs to be examined. The Upanishads needs to be examined. And stop focusing on the Enuma Elish and the stories of the Anunnaki and the Bible people. You're still being Western bias is pointless. And start reading everything. Read the Chinese materials. This is one world. This is one world. It's the only world you've got. All right, I'm telling you that. You've got this far to people to get to understand. To begin to understand an old man like me, and you have patience to listen to me this far. Okay, so thank you. All right, but don't mind me scolding, the people who aren't listening. And I'm not angry at them, but I'm scolding them, because It doesn't really matter because there's nothing they can do to fix what's coming. It's really interesting to find out all the things about the most ancient of times, about all this human history. But it's only about 100 years maximum, 200 if you're lucky, that you've got to enjoy it, unless some great miracle happens and some catastrophe happens and cools the planet, or enough humans kill each other off, or enough humans team together like they did at Gobekli Tepe and did this great work, stonework, in tribute to some cosmic event that had moved them to unify to do this. Because that's what Gobekli Tepe represents, was collective effort. Before there were cities, cities existed to hold grains, and then they needed walls to protect them from attack. And religions needed to have walls to protect their treasuries, unless depending on the religion and where they were. Like, didn't need one for you didn't need one for Anglesey till the Romans came along, you know. But yeah, the hunter-gatherer cultures were not primitive. They were sophisticated. They had vast oral literatures, traditions, and the traditions of the Gauls and the Eddas are just a fragment of what must have existed in the Norse world, you know, and the oral traditions of Britain and Ireland and what must have been in Gaul and Iberia, the Celtiberians, you know, and who knows in Punic? That's the whole thing. Punic culture is one of the oldest, right? And we know so little about it thanks to the Romans destroying Carthage the way they did and burning absolutely everything and plowing the ground with stone. They burned all their books and their scrolls and libraries and all we know about them. We only know a little bit about the cult of Tanit. And she's portrayed as a baby-eating vulture. Yeah, well, you can look at Kali that way too, and there's any number of Aztec goddesses you could fix the same way. You know, so it looks to me also that Punic civilization did cross the Atlantic and find refuge in North America. And whether they intermixed or not, I don't care. But we, not just the mountains, but there's Punic items, you know, Punic writing, Hebrew writing. And it's legit, you know. It's the same as the Viking stuff. Of course they came across. You know, of course they came across. You know, what are they? Because they're white people, they don't know how to sail? Come on. But only the native people or the indigenous peoples of North America, the Amarants, only they're capable of migrating from one continent to another? No. We've been using the ocean since long before such a thing as the Bering Ice Bridge was necessary. Was it necessary? No, it wasn't. Of course, it wasn't necessary. The seas were a lot lower. The whole Aleutians was like the British Columbia coast. There was like a lot of land there that was you could walk from Asia across the Alaska coast and down British Columbia without having to go anywhere near the ice. Oh, it makes so much sense, right? So what happened after the impact and it melted all that? Well, you couldn't walk across the Bering Strait anymore now, could you? All right. But, you know, people could still sail across the Atlantic, and they did. And that's why there's also, like, you know, there's actual African ruins, not just bones, ruins, in Brazil, I think in Belo Horizonte recently. Maybe it's just bones, but I thought it was also ruins. You know, this is what I say about South America and North America. Maybe we're much older than we know. You know, and you never know what that ice wiped out from so many million years ago. And you know, the Yugos go back millions of years, really. How long does humanity? They say that we've evolved to this form in recent times. Maybe, yeah, okay, maybe, right? But there's these stories of other races and all this land that got wiped out by the ice and water, and you know, we just don't have the evidence to deny a lot of things. That's the thing, is you can only deny what you actually have evidence that you can prove did not exist. You can't prove that something did not exist by not having evidence that I think you see what I'm saying. I'm having a problem with the grammar there. You can't deny just by basis of the logic that because you don't have any evidence for something that it does not exist. No, I'm not saying that then you can believe just in anything. But epistemologically, what you believe is real. Now the Icelanders, they believe in elves. And you don't just joke about Irish leprechaun. You don't joke about trolls in Norway. You know, people know there's other things. You know, same here in BC. You show respect to the land, to the spirits, whatever they want to call it. You know, show respect to everything with the native culture. Yeah, same in Norse culture, same in Celtic culture, same in all the pre-religious cultures before the rules of the church were laid down and restricted theory, restricted knowledge, and restricted the ancient knowledge of the world, and restricted our ancient harmony with it. Too late for that, folks, though. The ancient harmony, it's gone. Right, I'm going back to some of it for now. I'm going to enjoy some of it. I'm going to read all the interesting things I'd like to read, including, the legitimate history of BC. Now, but this issue about the whole Hiawatha and the early history of mankind and how it was affected by this cosmic impact and whatever other things that ended the previous, it's like 20,000 years as things go back. I really want to have a look at the history of Erasmus. If somebody out there in the Masonic community would have sympathy on this gold guy, I don't have the patience to deal with your order and become a member in order to be sent through the order to get the rights to read it. But if you would have a look and just confirm or make comment, perhaps if you're a Mason, go find it at the library and talk to, say, a Blue Friar or Blue Scribe or whatever they're called, and say, look, can I tell this guy any of this? I can't say I'm going to keep it secret, but it's time for you guys to stop keeping secrets. It goes for you too, Vatican. When you keep that many records of other civilizations in your basement and you don't let them out because you're protecting their own religion, it's kind of disgusting, okay? Yeah, like I say, I'm talking as a survivor of somebody who woke up from your destruction. Maybe there is such a thing as reincarnation, and maybe the nun at the Buddhist temple, the Buddhist monastery in Bali really was welcoming home a former abbot. Not welcoming home, she was trying to find out if I was one because I was going through something when I was there. And then she knew I was a Buddhist, asked me what I wanted. Anyways, I am a crazy old man. I am a son of Odin. I am Michael the One-Eye. Michael One-Eye? Yeah, maybe that's going to be my name as a vlogger. Do you like that? Michael the One-Eye? Because this eye here, she don't work too well. Although this is the eye I'm looking at you with, but although this is the eye that, it's funny, I can see distance with it better than this one, I got through the glasses, right? And here, of course, this is the one that is not, I don't think it's looking at you, it's probably looking somewhere else. I'm not blind. Well, I'm blind to these, but this eye doesn't really functionally work, even though it sees things. This is my thinking eye. Or is it not? Maybe it is my thinking eye. I'm really, see, I have no reason to be serious in this world. So when somebody calls me crazy, after seeing all I've seen in all my life and the ways people have behaved, never mind personal stuff, just in the world, finance, war, commerce, all, sex, religion, how can you not be crazy? How can you live in this world and not be crazy and call yourself sane? How can you do that? I really don't get it. So when somebody calls me crazy, I can only laugh and pity them, right? If only they knew what I knew and were capable of staying sane like I am. Took me a while, I don't let any of it press me anymore. I have to laugh at it all. You got to be entertained like this, The end of the world is the best show on TV, man. You just got to look for what it's about. And I'm not being a pessimist about it at all, right? Nor do I want to say, oh, look at this biblical prophecy, look at the Maya prophecy. Oh, look at them all, and just chill, like it says on the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, don't panic, you just relax. Watch the show, enjoy the show, keep your head down, right? Read more, feed your head, like it says at the end of White Rabbit, feed your head. The end professor is finally signing off to all his friends in the university. Finally watch this, even if it's centuries down the line, if we have centuries. I don't think we do. Anyways, maybe I'll live to see the end. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, but I've seen enough to know that I really don't need to listen to people who tell me that I'm crazy when, no, I've absorbed all the information, folks. I'm digested it. I'm managing. I'm surfing the knowledge and managing to stay sane. I'm just trying to share it with younger people so that they might have half a chance of surviving what's coming and realizing the scale of it, and marveling at where we've come from, and marveling that things that weren't known 10 years ago are now kind of miraculous, like this whole knowledge of the Hiawatha thing and the disappearance of all the civilizations to the water from the drowning of Dwarka, whatever that flood is. The biblical floods, all of these things, the two phases of them, not just the biblical, the Dwarka flood, that could be biblical flood too. Yes, it is, right? But then there's also this 12,800 flood, and the darkening of the world, and the planetary event, yeah, and there's others, and we're living in a cosmic bowling alley, that asteroid belt, I don't know where this particular comet or meteor came from, but that asteroid belt, it's got some dillies up there, you know, and we don't necessarily see them coming. Nor do we have a way of dealing with it if they did. If we see one coming, big folks, you might as well just party, man. Because if you all these Bruce Willis going up there and trying to blow something up to keep it from blowing up the Earth, good luck. Maybe revering it off. You want to, know about it a year or two before it's coming. Have the time to get a ship up there to stop it in time, to divert it another way, and knock it out of the path, knock it out of your path. No, you got to come up with laser beams to defend this planet, or else you get some kind of planetary magnetic grid. But what if something's not magnetic? What if it's just ice? Anyways, I could ramble all night. It's the danger of being an old man with too much knowledge, because it's too much fun to tell it all. I feel like a human fountain. A human fountain who doesn't want to get turned off, because there's only so much time in this world, and I've learned a lot. Not in detail, but all these facts are tied together, So this is why the Hiawatha Glacier thing, it sounds very unscientific to bring up stuff like the Kolbrin and the Book of Enoch. And just to mention the names that gets people going, this is another religion guy. No, I'm talking religion. I'm just talking, looking at the events and then the way people look at the events in Genesis, and events in the Enumilish, and events in the Rig Veda. Just go look at them and compare them to what we now know about the geological, astronomical, I call it maybe the sidereal record, this effect of the planet, the planet's interaction with something that fell from the sky, whatever that's called. It's not just astronomy, there's a word for it. Geoastronomy, I don't know. It's a beautiful world. I'm glad I came to understand a lot of it, more than I ever did when I was younger. Although I was always, I won't run about my life. It was hard becoming educated. And being in university was only part of my education. About that, I don't want to say a lot, too much more. I could say much more. But I do know how much I've read. I do know how much I know. I do know that I know far too much for my own good goddamn good. I know too much for my own good, and that's for damn sure. So I'm the young professor, Mike Cloud, big skookum. I think what I've got in the fridge, what can I make? I need some ice cream or something. I don't think I have any. You have a good night. Bye-bye.